In 1958, the most efficient restaurant in America had no dining room and kept no waiters on a floor. 640 of them ran in one chain alone, and everyone turned on teenage girls and roller skates. Picture a warm evening, a neon mug flickering above a gravel lot. A girl of 16 skates out with a steel tray of frosted mugs and clips it to a car window. For millions of families, that was supper, and it felt permanent. But what almost no one says out loud is where that girl went. So here's the question worth the next 40 minutes. How did curb service, a whole food system run on roller skates, lose to a counter indoors? Here's a 1958 A and W tray clipped to a car window, and here's a drive-through speaker box bolted to a pole today. One of them employed your daughter, and one of them replaced her. Somewhere in that answer, one chain refused to move indoors, and that's why a car hop can still skate to a window tonight. America remembers the drive-in. The girl on skates who built it got forgotten. The trail begins in Lodi, California in the summer of 1919 when a man named Roy Allen poured his first frosted mug of root beer. He kept his mugs packed in ice so the frost bloomed white the second the drink hit them. A cold, sweet drink on a 100-degree valley afternoon sold itself, and within a year, Allen had opened a second stand. By 1922, he'd taken on a partner, a young man named Frank Wright. They set their two initials over the door, the A and the W, and that name has held for more than a century. Allen was arguably selling something far larger than a drink, the promise that a customer could stay put and still be served. The stand grew a canopy, then a gravel lot, then a small crew who carried the tray out to the curb. Curb service, in truth, became the real product, and the root beer was merely the reason to pull in. And the mug, that heavy, sweating, ice-cold mug, became the one object every kid in town knew by feel. Hold on to that mug, because this whole story ends with it in a child's hand. A and W spread through the 1920s on a then-novel idea called the franchise. A man with a little money could buy the name and the method, then plant his own stand on a corner across the country. By the 1930s, the orange and black mug signs stood along highways from California clear into the Midwest. Perhaps 1,000 of them, by most counts. Now, the Depression should have killed a nickel luxury like root beer, and paradoxically, it did the opposite. A frosted mug cost 5 cents, and 5 cents was a cheap way to feel like the good times hadn't ended. A family with almost nothing could still pull in on a Sunday and be waited on inside their own car. That feeling, being served without being rich, is what A and W was actually selling. But the person delivering all of it, every single time, was a teenager with a tray. So how did she take an order, carry it, and clip it to a car with no intercom, no headset, nothing but a code? That's the next page. Clip the tray to the window step onto a 1940s drive-in lot, and the first thing you'd notice is how quiet the ordering was. There was no speaker box crackling and no microphone on a pole. A driver pulled in, flashed the headlights, or tapped the horn twice, and a car hop read the signal from clear across the lot. She skated over, took the order by voice, and repeated it back once to be sure. More precisely, she memorized it, because most car hops carried a little pad they almost never looked at. The kitchen worked off her call, and a few minutes later she rolled back out with the tray held dead level. Then came the small piece of engineering that held the entire idea together. The tray had a lip, or a folding bracket, that hooked over a rolled-down car window. It turned the car door into a dinner table, and a good tray fit a Ford and a Chevrolet and a Studebaker all at once. A family ate inside their own car, the radio playing low. When they finished, the same girl skated back to unclip the tray and count the mugs. Those mugs are worth pausing on because a busy A and W might wash frosted glass by the thousand on a single Saturday night in July. Think about the choreography of a full lot on a hot night. 30 cars, a dozen orders in the air at once, and 2 or 3 girls skating it all without a single ticket printer. The whole system placed a remarkable amount of trust in a 15-year-old. Michael Carl Witzel, who wrote the standard history of the drive-in, called this a kind of folk technology. It ran on human memory and human muscle, and it worked because labor was cheap and plentiful. And that's precisely what made it fragile, because a system that runs on a person can be undercut the moment somebody prices that person out. Every part of curb service that felt warm and human was also a cost, sitting on a gravel lot, waiting to be cut. For 30 years, none of it mattered, because there was nothing cheaper to put in her place. But who was she, this person the whole system leaned on? That's where the real story has been hiding all along. She was, by the widely cited estimate, one of 9 in 10. The Carhop workforce ran heavily female, heavily teenage, and almost entirely on tips. For a great many of these girls, it was the first job of their lives. She might be 15 or 16, hired for the summer, handed a uniform and a tray, and told to keep moving. The skates weren't universal in truth, and plenty of drive-ins worked their Carhops on foot. But the operators who put their girls on wheels understood something about speed and about spectacle. A Carhop on skates covered the lot faster, she drew every eye in the place, and the skating itself became the advertising. Here's the piece that history tends to skip right over, though. She wasn't on a salary worth the name. She lived on whatever drivers dropped on the tray, which meant every order was a small negotiation. Read a carload right, and the tip came easy. Read it wrong, and a whole family might leave nothing but the change. So a 16-year-old learned to price a stranger's mood in the time it took to skate across a parking lot. That's a real skill, arguably the most portable skill there is. Millions of American women learned it first on a drive-in lot in the dark for tips. The Bureau of Labor Statistics counted teenagers pouring into paid work through the mid-1950s, and the drive-in was one of their widest doors. A whole generation of women could point to a gravel lot and say their first wage came clipped to a car window. A Carhop who worked a busy summer could out-earn her own father's day rate on a good Saturday night. That money was hers, earned on her own wheels, and for many it was the first dollar that ever felt like freedom. Now here's the strange economics underneath it. The job looked cheap to the owner and felt rich to the girl. She was cheap because her real pay came out of the customer's pocket and never off the owner's payroll. Which meant the day a competitor found a way to erase even that thin wage, she'd suddenly become the expensive option. Hold that idea close, because it's the hinge the whole story turns on. First, though, the drive-in got one golden decade, and it was never really about the food. By 1948, the American drive-in hit full stride, and the reason was parked in every new driveway. The country was building automobiles faster than it had ever built anything. A family with a shiny new car wanted somewhere to take it on a Friday night, and the drive-in was the answer. A&W led the chains. By 1960, more than 600 A&W drive-ins were operating across the United States, and around them, by most counts, stood thousands of independents. In the early and mid-1950s, A&W's reach across the map ran well ahead of a young hamburger outfit called McDonald's. But the sheer number of stands isn't what made the era golden. Look closer, and the lot itself was doing something no dining room on earth could do. It had quietly become the town square for anyone under 20. A teenager with the family keys finally had a place to be that belonged to teenagers. A slow lap of the lot was called cruising, and a boy might make 10 of them before he found the nerve to park. Once he did, he could order 2 root beers and spend 3 hours going absolutely nowhere. That was the quiet genius of the drive-in. It sold a cheap supper, then gave away the one thing teenagers wanted most: a room of their very own, out under the sky, with no walls and no parents. By 1955, a teenager could hear rock and roll pouring out of a drive-in speaker for the price of a nickel root beer. Detroit sold the car, the radio sold the song, and A&W sold the place to park and listen. So the drive-in became a 3-way handshake between an automobile, a jukebox, and a girl on skates. Take Away any one of the three, and the whole scene came apart, and one of the three was about to be quietly priced out. And yet nothing about that scene was permanent, though every soul in the lot assumed it was. 50-odd miles east of Los Angeles sat San Bernardino, where two brothers were about to close their own drive-in for 3 whole months. When they reopened, the girl on skates was already living on borrowed time. She just couldn't hear the clock yet. Here's the objection a sharp viewer is already forming. People simply wanted their food faster and cheaper, so the slow car hop lost on the merits. Case closed. It's the smartest version of the story, and it also happens to be wrong about the food. Look hard at the trays, and the burgers coming off them were the same burgers before and after. What moved was the cost of carrying it out to the car. In 1948, in San Bernardino, California, two brothers named Richard McDonald and Maurice McDonald shut their drive-in and gutted it. They'd run an ordinary car hop operation for years, and they'd finally done the cold math on it. The car hops needed managing, the glassware kept breaking, and the trays wandered off. The crowds they drew were teenagers who lingered for hours and spent almost nothing, so they tore the entire model out by the roots. When they reopened, there were no car hops and no glass mugs. They called the new thing the Speedy Service System. A driver parked, walked up to a window, ordered off a short menu, and carried the food back himself in paper. The menu shrank to a handful of items so the kitchen could run like an assembly line. Each worker did one motion and only one, and the line never once stopped. Two brothers had turned a hamburger stand into a factory floor. A car hop had done all of that herself, out on skates, one car at a time. The Speedy Service System took her whole job and split it into pieces a stopwatch could measure. Speed stopped being a talent and became a machine setting instead. Now the brothers weren't cruel men, and they weren't out to punish anyone. They were arguably just the first to see the car hop as a number on a ledger rather than a fixture on a lot. The number said she was expensive, and the number won. The customer got his food faster and a few cents cheaper, so he rarely mourned the tray he used to be handed. A whole country traded the girl on skates for 15 saved seconds and a dime, and most drivers never felt the trade at all. That's how a way of life ends, quietly, one satisfied customer at a time. And here's the reframe the whole industry missed while it was happening. For 30 years, the drive-in's collapse got told as a story about taste, but read the ledgers and it's a story about arithmetic. The Speedy Service System won with a subtraction. It deleted one whole line off the payroll and handed the car hop's job to the customer for free. So the girl on skates worked as fast as she ever had. The math around her changed, and the change made her look expensive overnight. That's the cruel part. She never slowed down for a second, and the world simply found a way to stop paying for what she did. The stopwatch had started, and it was counting her out. The only question left was how fast the rest of the country would copy San Bernardino. The answer, it turned out, was fast, faster than anyone still wearing a car hop uniform wanted to believe. Through the 1950s and into the 1960s, the walk-up window spread the same way the drive-in had a generation before. Every new operator ran the same numbers the brothers in San Bernardino had run, and the numbers said the same thing every time. Self-serve was cheaper. So the tray came off the window, the counter moved indoors, and it stayed there. The frosted glass mug went first because glass had to be washed, iced, and replaced the moment it shattered. Paper and wax cost pennies, then got thrown straight in the bin. The sweating mug gave way to a waxed paper cup with a plastic lid, and the tray followed it into the storeroom. Cars had once parked nose to nose for a whole evening. Now they idled in a single slow line, took a paper bag, and pulled straight back onto the road. The 3-hour Saturday night shrank to a 90-second transaction. By the 1970s, the walk-up window learned a brand new trick. It grew a speaker box and a lane, and the customer never even left his car anymore. The whole point of the drive-in had been a person coming out to serve a driver in his own car. The drive-thru kept the car and deleted the person, so the convenience survived, while the humanity quietly left the lot. A&W felt this hard. The chain that had once outrun McDonald's spent the 1960s and 1970s watching the self-serve model eat its lunch. Some locations became sit-down restaurants, others bolted on a drive-through lane, and a great many simply went dark. The frosted mug survived on the menu, but the girl who used to carry it slipped off the payroll. By then, the Carhop on skates had thinned to a memory across most of the map. The job that gave a whole generation of women their first paycheck was quietly vanishing from the American roadside. Almost everywhere, the counter had moved inside and locked the door behind it. Almost. One stubborn operator out in Oklahoma had studied the very same math and drawn the opposite conclusion. He's the reason this story isn't only a headstone. His name was Troy Smith, and in 1953, he opened a drive-in in Shawnee, Oklahoma. The sign out front read, Top Hat, and the name Sonic was still 6 years away. Top Hat ran the old way with Carhops carrying trays out to parked cars, exactly as A&W had taught the country to expect. Smith watched the walk-up windows spread across the 1950s, same as everyone else did. He could easily have followed the crowd and moved his counter indoors. Instead, he did something stubborn and arguably a little contrary. He leaned harder into the stall. That's the covered parking space with its own menu board and a call button where a Carhop still brings the food out to the car. Smith wired in intercoms so a driver could order straight from the stall without flashing a single light. The old horn and headlight code became a button and a voice on a speaker. He kept the girl and the tray, and he kept the whole ritual A&W had invented. Then, in 1959, he renamed the whole operation Sonic under the slogan, Service with the Speed of Sound, and he began franchising the very format the rest of the industry was busy abandoning. Sonic kept the Carhop on purpose, and that single decision is the reason she never fully vanished. While every competitor was deleting the tray, Sonic built an entire chain on it. The stall stayed, the tray stayed, and in a great many towns, so did the skates. Sonic still runs skating contests for its Carhops today, keeping the old spectacle alive on purpose. And now here's the payoff I promised you back at the very start. More than 2,000 Sonic drive-ins are still operating in 2026. Every last one runs on a version of the system Roy Allen started on a gravel lot in Lodi in 1919. A driver still parks in a numbered stall, and a Carhop still carries the tray out. The order still comes to the car, exactly the way it did in 1958. Meanwhile, a handful of the original A&W stands held on, in towns that flat refuse to let them close. Pull into one of those on a summer night, and the mug still comes frosted, poured much the way Roy Allen poured it in 1919. Two stubborn ideas, Smith's and Allen's, survived a century that tried hard to automate them both away. So the Carhop on skates is a museum piece across most of America. In more than 2,000 parking lots tonight, though, she's still very much on the clock. What did a generation lose then, when almost everywhere else let her go? Count up what the Carhop economy actually taught, and it runs far past fast food. It was a first job that put a real wage in a teenager's hand and asked something real in return. A girl learned to show up on time and to carry a loaded tray without a spill. She learned to keep 6 orders straight in her head while 3 cars honked at once. And she learned the oldest lesson in all of service work. Being good to people, quickly, is a thing worth actual money. There's a reason employers once prized a young woman who'd worked a drive-in. She'd already learned to stand a long shift, take an order under pressure, and hold her temper when a customer didn't hold his. Those lessons followed her into every job that came after. Now weigh what replaced that on-ramp. The self-serve window still hired teenagers, of course, but the job changed shape underneath them. More precisely, the negotiation went away. The customer served himself now, so there was no tip to earn and no stranger left to read. The skill a Carhop built out on the lot was a quick human read of another person. That skill stopped being part of the paycheck, and that's the quiet loss hiding inside the loud one. The country lost more than a way to eat supper on a summer night. It lost one of the doors that a certain kind of hard-won confidence used to walk through. A generation of women could stand in a gravel lot and say, "This is where I learned to work," and their granddaughters mostly can't. No law banned the car hop, and no vote ever retired her. She simply stopped penciling out, year by year, until the skates became a novelty act. The forgetting was passive, in truth, and that's exactly what makes it so hard to mourn. If you want the night version of this story, where the car became the movie seat, the drive-in theater film continues it on this channel. So one question remains, and it's the one this whole story has been skating toward from the first frame. Where can a person still order supper without ever leaving the car? The answer is smaller than it used to be, and it's still out there in the dark. It's a Sonic stall on a summer night, in a town not far from wherever you happen to be sitting. Picture an old man and his granddaughter pulling into a stall as the light goes orange. He grew up on a lot like this one, back when more than 600 A&W drive-ins ran on girls in skates. She's never known a world where the tray came out to the window, and she doesn't yet know she's looking at a survivor. He remembers this ritual from the far side of his whole life. His own first date, perhaps, happened on a lot like this, or the first dollar he ever tipped a girl on skates. He knows the weight of a full mug and the cold that lifts off the glass before he's even ordered. He orders 2 root beers and presses the call button. A car hop rolls out with a tray of frosted mugs and clips it to the glass. The old man watches her skate away, and he doesn't explain what it cost the country to almost lose this. He just hands the girl the heavy, sweating mug and lets her feel the frost bloom against her palm. She watches the car hop skate back across the lot and asks him who that is. He tells her it's the last of something, though he can't quite find the word for what. What changed was never the flavor of the root beer. What changed was who carried it, and whether that work was still worth paying a person to do. She takes a long, cold drink and asks why they don't do it like this everywhere. He doesn't answer her. He lets the question sit between them, because one day soon she'll be the one who has 2. The mug still sweats on the tray at a Sonic tonight. Order from the car, and you'll be holding the last page of a story America stopped telling.